хүндрээр high investment-ийн гүйцэтгэгчрэл ноён Travis Hamilton-ыг студид урьж ирүүлээрэн. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with SEFIL, the Strategic Entities Foreign Investment Law. The government announced a change, obviously, a huge one, an expected one. But is it too little, too late, or one giant leap to invest a kind? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a huge positive step forward. Obviously, there has been a deterioration in foreign investment sentiment over the last several months since the middle of last year. And I think now, as we approach some legislative certainty and policy clarity, that's going to do hugely beneficial things with regards to foreign investment interest.
And also, I think the Prime Minister stressed during the forum with the diplomatic corps that a new initiative to draft investment law to provide stability to foreign investment. And how much hope do you think it brings, a real change?
Very hopeful. I'm very encouraged by comments that have been made publicly by the government. But over the last week, I've been fortunate enough to meet with a number of members of parliament and several ministers. And I think the government is very serious about these positive changes. And I expect that we are going to receive this clarity within the first week of the spring session of parliament.
Do you observe any change in the tone, perhaps?
Very welcoming.
Well, that's good to know. And you often show hope when you regularly meet with media, and especially in investing Mongolia. Has it changed in any way dramatically since last year, for example?
I think the future looks very bright. 2012 was a challenging year, not only for Mongolia, but particularly within the resource sector. That clearly had a number of significant knock-on effects that affected Mongolia as well as the government's budget. I am hopeful that over the coming summer months, we are going to see a significant improvement in the investment environment here.
Do you think the environment changed in terms of raising capital overseas since the Mongolian government issued the Chinggis bond?
I mean, the Chinggis bond was a wonderful development for the government and also for Mongolia. It was hugely successful, and I think it beat everybody's expectations. I think that subsequent to the issue of the bond, there has been a number of concerns of foreign investors, which was based largely on legislative uncertainty and a lack of clarity regarding policy. As we mentioned, that's currently being addressed, which is a huge positive. But I think another significant effect that has really dampened investor interest has been the amount of largely inaccurate reporting by a number of international media organizations. Far too often have I read international media reports that have been based on hype or on speculation and not actually on fact or any empirical evidence. So I think largely the journalistic community does have something to answer for within that respect.
And you mentioned that there was some sort of uncertainty, now followed by hope, basically. What do you think is now the biggest obstacle in terms of investment climate here in Mongolia?
I think
if we sought, of course, the legal framework and those regulatory challenges.
Foreign investment law will be a huge step forward. Personally, I'm looking forward very much to legislation of the new securities law. I think that will do a lot to actually develop the local capital market and drive investment into the local stock exchange, not simply into foreign companies that are looking to invest in the private sector here. I think there are two very important aspects. There is obviously a presidential election coming up. There's a number of international spectators that are really waiting perhaps for that event to come and pass, which actually I think that sets the stage for a wonderful summer.
Since you brought up the securities law, of course there was a lot of waiting around the securities law. But let me just ask you this. The Mongolian Stock Exchange is said to reach market capitalization of $40 billion in the next 3 years, according to the Mongolian Stock Exchange CEO. And how realistic do you think his comments were?
Look, I think that's very optimistic, and I share Altai's optimism. But having said that, I think it's going to be a very difficult target to achieve. But from my perspective, even if the Mongolian Stock Exchange acquires a market capitalization of half of that, I mean, it's still an incredibly significant multiple of where we are today. And those positive effects will hopefully be felt right through the economy.
And I would like to ask about the recent developments. And for the last 2 days, Mongolia saw the Japanese Prime Minister cancelling his trip to Australia and instead coming to Mongolia. And it's wonderful. And how important do you think the Japanese Prime Minister's visit to Mongolia, especially securing Japan's energy needs?
I think it's incredibly significant. Japan has been a very strong supporter of Mongolia, one of Mongolia's largest aid donors. I think it is very impressive to see the relationship strengthening even further. I congratulated the Prime Minister today on his very successful meeting and the strengthening of that relationship.
And in terms of bilateral relations, do you think, is Japan a crucial partner that Mongolia needs, or is it the other way around? Just a simple matter of opinion.
I think, there's always two sides to bilateral relations. I think that both countries can work together for mutual benefit.
Well, Travis, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.